Once, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a great king who was blessed with 3 daughters. The 2 older daughters were undeniably beautiful, admired by many, and soon found suitors eager to marry them. However, it was the youngest daughter, Psyche, who captured everyone's attention. Psyche's beauty was so remarkable that it seemed otherworldly. Her radiant face and graceful demeanor made people stop in their tracks, and whispers spread through the city like wildfire. It was said that Psyche's beauty surpassed even that of the goddess Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Whenever Psyche walked through the streets, men would bow deeply, as if a goddess had graced them with her presence. This adoration, however, did not bring joy to Psyche's life. Instead, it caught the attention of the proud and jealous Aphrodite. Hearing that a mortal girl was being compared to her and even worshipped above her, Aphrodite grew enraged. How dare a mere human rival the beauty of a goddess? Determined to put an end to this insult, Aphrodite devised a plan to punish Psyche. She called upon her son, Cupid, whose magical arrows could make anyone fall in love with the person he chose. "Come with me," Aphrodite commanded Cupid one evening, her voice filled with anger. "I have a task for you." The two flew through the skies until they reached the palace where Psyche lived. Peering through the window, Aphrodite pointed to the sleeping girl. Her face was calm and serene as moonlight bathed her in a soft glow. "Look at her," Aphrodite whispered, her voice cold. "This is the girl who dares to steal my worshippers. I want you to prick her with one of your arrows so that she falls hopelessly in love with the most miserable, unworthy man you can find." Cupid stepped closer, gazing at Psyche. As he looked at her, something strange happened. Her beauty and innocence touched his heart in a way he had never felt before. He hesitated, lowering his bow. "I won't do it," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I cannot harm her, and I cannot make her love someone unworthy." Without waiting for Aphrodite's response, Cupid disappeared into the night, leaving his mother fuming with anger. Meanwhile, Psyche's extraordinary beauty began to feel like a curse. Though men admired her from afar and spoke of her beauty with reverence, none dared to approach her for marriage. They believed she was too perfect for a mortal man. Her 2 older sisters married noblemen and started families, but Psyche remained alone, longing for a love that seemed out of reach. Her parents grew increasingly worried as years passed, and Psyche reached an age when most girls were already married. The king, desperate to find a solution, called upon the wise men of the kingdom for advice. After much deliberation, they suggested consulting the oracle, a sacred place where the gods revealed their will. Hoping for a miracle, the king traveled to the oracle, praying for guidance about his daughter's future. However, when he returned days later, his face was pale, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. The queen rushed to him, her heart pounding with fear. What did the oracle say? She asked anxiously. The king sighed deeply, his voice trembling as he replied, "The gods have spoken. Psyche must be taken to the top of a high mountain and left there. She is destined to become the bride of a monstrous creature that awaits her. The queen cried out in despair, and the entire palace was overcome with grief. How could they sacrifice their beloved daughter to such a terrible fate? On the appointed day, a sorrowful procession made its way to the mountain. Psyche walked at the center, dressed in black, her face calm yet pale. Her father led her, his steps heavy with sorrow, while her mother followed behind, weeping uncontrollably. Psyche, however, accepted her fate with quiet dignity. She believed it was the will of the gods, and that resisting would be futile. When they reached the rocky peak, the family bid their final farewells. Her parents embraced her tightly, their tears soaking her garments. Psyche comforted them as best she could, though her own heart trembled with fear. After one last embrace, the family departed, leaving Psyche alone on the desolate mountaintop. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the land, Psyche sat on the cold rock, trembling at the thought of the monster that would soon appear. Exhausted by her grief and the long journey, Psyche eventually fell into a deep sleep. While she slept, something extraordinary happened. Cupid, who had been secretly watching over her, descended from the heavens. Gently, he lifted Psyche in his arms and carried her down the mountain to a lush, beautiful valley. There, he placed her on a soft bed of lilac and ensured she was surrounded by peace and beauty. When Psyche awoke, she found herself in an unfamiliar but enchanting place. The valley was filled with vibrant flowers, sparkling streams, and gentle breezes. In the distance, she spotted a magnificent palace made entirely of ivory and gold, curious and a little cautious. Psyche approached the palace. Its towering doors were open, inviting her inside. As she stepped through the grand entrance, her eyes widened in awe. Every room was adorned with treasures beyond her imagination. Golden chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and the floors shimmered like polished glass. Who lives here? Psyche wondered aloud, her voice echoing through the empty halls. To her surprise, an unseen voice answered, "This palace is yours. Psyche, all that you see belongs to you. Command, and we will serve you." Though startled, Psyche felt a sense of comfort in the voice's kindness. She explored the palace further and found a luxurious bath waiting for her, followed by a feast of delicious food and wine. Though she saw no one, she felt cared for, as if invisible hands were tending to her every need. Days turned into weeks, and Psyche grew accustomed to her new life. She was happy, yet she couldn't help but feel a sense of mystery surrounding her situation. One evening, as she lay in bed, a soft voice spoke to her in the darkness. "Psyche," it said, "I am your husband. Though you cannot see me, know that I love you and will always care for you." Psyche listened, her heart touched by the sincerity in the voice. The voice continued, "However, there is one thing you must promise me. Your sisters will come searching for you. When they do, you must not speak to them or answer their questions. If you do, it could bring great sorrow to us both." Psyche promised to obey, But as time passed, she began to miss her family. She thought often of her sisters and the grief they must feel, believing her to be dead. One day, unable to bear the loneliness any longer, Psyche wept. When her unseen husband asked why she was sad, she pleaded to see her sisters, if only to tell them she was safe and happy. Though hesitant, her husband agreed but reminded her of his warning. Psyche assured him she would not reveal anything that could harm them. The next morning, Psyche's sisters were brought to the palace by invisible forces. They were overjoyed to see her alive, but were soon overcome by envy as they explored the palace's grandeur. Jealousy crept into their hearts, and they began questioning Psyche about her mysterious husband. Though she tried to avoid their questions, their persistence and envy threatened to unravel the happiness Psyche had found in her magical new life. Psyche remembered the warnings her husband had given her as her sisters began questioning her. Their curiosity felt dangerous, so she answered quickly, "Oh, my husband is young and very handsome, but he spends most of his time hunting." The sisters spent hours with her, pretending to be happy. But their hearts were filled with envy. Eventually, they left and were sent back to their homes. As they traveled back, the eldest sister couldn't hide her anger. "Why does fortune favor her so much more than us?" she cried. "Why does she get all the riches and a husband who is young and handsome, while we have nothing? It's unfair," groaned the second sister. "Let's not tell our parents about her happiness. Instead, we should plan to humble her, bring her down, and destroy this life she's so proud of." That evening, Psyche's husband returned to her side. His presence was gentle yet commanding. "Did you remember my warnings?" he asked quietly. "Did you avoid answering your sister's questions?" "Yes," Psyche answered eagerly. "I told them nothing that they truly wanted to know. I only said that you were young, handsome, and that you gave me the most beautiful gifts. I also said they couldn't meet you because you were away hunting in the mountains." He sighed deeply, his voice heavy with concern. "You may have spoken well, but your sisters are plotting against you. They will try to fill your heart with their own wicked curiosity. They want you to doubt me. One day, they will push you to ask to see my face, but the moment you do, I will vanish forever." Psyche's heart sank. Tears filled her eyes as she exclaimed, "You don't trust me. I have shown you that I can be silent and loyal. Let me prove it again. Please, allow my sisters to visit one more time." Her husband shook his head, reluctant to grant her request. But her pleading was so heartfelt that he finally gave in. "Very well," he said, though his voice carried a note of sorrow. "You may see them one more time, but be cautious." The next day, Psyche eagerly welcomed her sisters into the palace. They ran through the lush gardens and embraced her warmly. Beneath their smiles, however, their jealousy burned brightly. As they sat eating fruit by a sparkling fountain, the eldest sister spoke with a falsely sympathetic tone. "Psyche, it pains me to see you trapped in such deceit." Psyche frowned in confusion. "What do you mean? No one is deceiving me." I am the happiest woman alive, and no goddess could feel more blessed than I do." The second sister leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a terrible secret. "Your husband is not what you think he is. He is a monstrous serpent, with a swollen neck full of venom and a tongue that drips poison. The farmers have seen him swimming across the river at night." Their words struck Psyche like a storm. Her heart wavered as their sobs and false concern overwhelmed her. "It's true," Psyche admitted slowly, "that I have never seen his face. But his words are always sweet, and his touch is gentle. It's hard to believe he is a monster. Still, if you are right, tell me what I must do." The eldest sister's eyes gleamed with triumph. "That's why we came," she said. "Tonight, take a sharp knife and hide it under your pillow. When the serpent falls asleep, light a lamp, look at his face, and if he is the monster we believe, cut off his head." After her sisters left, Psyche was filled with doubt. Could her husband truly be a serpent? Her heart told her they were wrong, but her faith in her sisters was strong. That night, she prepared as they had instructed, hiding the knife and lighting a lamp when her husband fell asleep. To her astonishment, she saw not a serpent, but the most beautiful being she had ever laid eyes on. It was Cupid, the god of love himself. Overwhelmed by the sight, her hand trembled, and hot wax from the lamp dripped onto Cupid's shoulder. He woke instantly, his eyes filled with pain and betrayal. Without a word, Cupid fled, leaving Psyche heartbroken. Desperate and consumed by sorrow, she ran to the river, seeking to end her misery. But the gentle waters carried her to safety, placing her on a bank of soft flowers. When she woke, she resolved to search the world for her lost husband, no matter how long it took. Psyche wandered endlessly, her soul weighed down by despair. One day, a servant of Aphrodite found her and dragged her to the goddess. Aphrodite, furious with Psyche for loving her son, mocked and ridiculed her. "You will pay for your arrogance," she sneered. "Let's see if you can complete the tasks I assign." The first task was to sort a massive pile of mixed seeds by nightfall. Psyche stared at the impossible task. Knowing she could not succeed, exhausted, she collapsed on the ground. As she lay there, a tiny ant saw her plight and called for help. Soon, a swarm of ants arrived, working tirelessly to separate the seeds. By evening, the task was done. When Aphrodite saw the sorted seeds, she screamed in rage. "You didn't do this on your own," she accused. The next morning, she gave Psyche another task, to gather golden wool from fierce, wild sheep. Psyche approached the river near the sheep, feeling hopeless. A reed by the water whispered to her, "Wait until evening, when the sheep rest. Then you can collect the wool caught on the bush." Grateful for the advice, Psyche followed the reed's instructions and completed the task. But Aphrodite was still not satisfied. She sent Psyche to a dangerous mountain to collect black water from a guarded fountain. As Psyche climbed, an eagle swooped down, offering to help. The eagle flew past the dragons guarding the fountain and returned with the water. Each time Psyche succeeded, Aphrodite grew angrier, assigning new, even more dangerous tasks. But birds and beasts continued to come to Psyche's aid. Meanwhile, Cupid recovered from his wound and learned of Psyche's suffering. Filled with love and determination, he flew to Olympus to plead her case. The gods took pity on Psyche and granted her immortality. Cupid and Psyche were reunited, and their love triumphed over envy and malice. Psyche joined Cupid on Olympus, and together they lived happily among the gods, free from all trials and suffering.